Stuck inside my mind in this quarantine house. The light at the end of the tunnel isn't in sight. Where do I go to find someone to talk to about all of my flaws? You can never validate me, tell me the lies. I searched until nothing skills are not fine. We were to fit and it felt like a waste of time. I heard an interview and I felt an instant connection. I learned CAT, BBT, and mindfulness skills and each and every session. I'm going through, ready to ask the next question.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider making a donation to the podcast via Venmo to the username @NQCATX. Hello and welcome to NextQuest podcast, where I ask your potential therapist questions so you don't have to. I am your host, Noah S. Garcia, licensed professional counselor supervisor. Today, I welcome to the show Daniel Linder, licensed marriage and family therapist, who will be talking about his practice in an area of specialty, the effects of stigma and the internalization of social conditioning on mental health. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hi.
So tell us. Go ahead.
Yeah, what we're going to talk about today isn't my specialty. It's just something I was interested in, wrote about, and know a lot about, and incorporate into my work. But the real focus of my work is relationship therapy. And I'm an addiction recovery and intervention specialist as well. So
cool. Well, I think that's very important when it comes to stigma. Those are both like very big areas of importance when it comes to recognizing stigma and what people face in our communities. And incorporating that into your work, I think, is really important. On a relationship couple level and on a addiction level as well. So Daniel, why don't we start? What are your credentials and experience?
I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and addiction specialist, relationship trainer, couples and family therapist for over 30 years. I love what I do. Those are my credentials and those are my interests and specialties. Just a little bit about me that I bring into my work is that all of the work that I do is about empowering the transformation of relationships by developing a relationship with yourself. That's kind of the heart and soul of my work. Now, in terms of me as a person, and also combining that with my work, I would say, I've been into relationships more than anything else in my life. I'm a natural born relator off the streets of Brooklyn, ready to relate to anyone, anytime, anywhere about anything. And I listen too. I've always been into relationships all my life. For as long as I could remember, when I was 5 years old, I was always mesmerized and captivated by how people around me deal with each other in relationships. And I have found recently, I'm writing a book now, and I have found recently that what I'm really about and what's most important to me and my purpose in life is about making deep connections and creating intimate relationships. That's really what is most important to me. And the work that I do and the books that I'm writing are really all for people who are like me in a way, who put making deep connections and intimate relationships their top priority. So that's the little summary. Maybe that's more than what you asked for, but
no, that's awesome. Any and all information is appreciated on this show. So, in your practice, is the practice your name, or is it under a PLLC or?
Daniel A. Linder, MFT, but I have a website, and my website to contact me, to read about my articles, to access my services, to read about my stuff. It's all on my website, relationshipvision.com.
Cool, perfect. So in your practice, do you accept insurance? If so, which ones? If not, why not?
I do not accept insurance anymore. Maybe the last 5 or 10 years, I've reached the point in my career and my life where I want to just see private pay clients and not have to deal with the insurance and not be on panels and not be in networks and locked into their rules. And so where I am in my career right now, I'm not taking insurance and working on panels, because I've reached that point right now. I'm so in demand, and I can work so much. I don't need to be on panels anymore. So it's just me, straight up, me and you. And if I have my fees, and if my fees are too much for you, I could adjust them if that's an issue, sliding scale based on ability to pay, because I don't want money to be an obstacle if you're motivated for treatment. So I could adjust the fees within my own comfort and the other person's comfort.
So we would call it more of like a reduced fee than like a traditional sliding scale that has like poverty levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, not that. Right.
Yeah.
Sliding scale, if needed, as needed.
Got it. Do you have weekend or evening appointments?
In the last year and a half during the pandemic, I've given up my office and doing all my work on Zoom. And I have found I have incredible flexibility. I can work every day is like Sunday. Every day is the same day for me. I can schedule clients morning, evenings, in midday, doesn't matter what day it is. It's like I'm available 24/7 right now. So I am seeing clients, and it's going to be a long time before I don't have any openings at all. I have to be really, really, really filled up.
Okay. Is being a therapist your first career? If not, what was?
Well, what I was saying before, it is my only career, and it's my passion, and I'm very, very blessed and fortunate to have this career because I love it, and it's everything I wanted it to be. It's perfect. It's a perfect fit for my natural skills and abilities. And so I'm totally into and grateful for the career that I have and the work that I'm doing. And if I was to do something else, if there was another career that I would have preferred to do instead, it would have been screenwriting and film. And I didn't think I had as much talent for that as I do to be a therapist and work on relationships. So I'm going where the action is. That's
I hear you, man. I hear you. So it sounds like, this just passion for relationships and connection is what drew you to being a therapist. Was that the main driver, or were there other drivers as well? Or did it come as like a byproduct of beginning to recognize like your skill sets, for example?
I think that after I graduated for my college with a BA, I realized that I need to figure out what I want to do with my career. This was after college, after 4 years of partying and having a great time and just enjoying the whole thing. I had to figure out what I'm going to do. What was my major and where was I going to go? And I realized, so upon looking at that, making a decision about that, this was a no-brainer. Wait, so what did I answer your question? No.
Yeah, I mean, I asked you what drew you to being a therapist, and it sounds like relationships were really the big thing.
Yeah, I just love working on relationships, and since I've been so into it all of my life, and all of my awareness of my experience has been kind of in relation to relationships. So I just realized that I'm going to do what I'm naturally good at, what I'm most interested in, and where I can make the biggest difference. It was a no-brainer for me. Therapy.
Got it. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like, what are your hobbies, interests, TV shows you're watching, music, pets, kids, etc.?
I love my dog. I wanted a dog all my life, and my wife was not into dogs and didn't want a pet. And for many years, I didn't have a dog. But 5 years ago, I got my dog. It's Brown Lab, and it was more, and it was everything that I always wanted to have a dog to be. And I love her, and she's. I live in Austin, Texas now with my wife and my dog in a condo. It's away from people, and I'm so happy to have my dog with me and my wife. It's the three of us. So I don't have. There are only a few things that I'm really, really into and know a lot about, and that is film, movies, theater, sports, relationships, a lot of politics, which we're probably going to get into a little bit later. But I have some very strong political views and positions that I'm very passionate about, and I'm very into those areas, whether it's guns or whether it's Israel-Palestine or whether it's Black Lives Matter. There are other things that I'm very, very interested in, that my life purpose overlaps with that just it's in my guts to be interested and care and move towards making a difference and making changes happen in those areas. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So when you're in therapy with clients, what modalities do you tend to draw upon?
I'm very eclectic. I feel very, 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 I had great training, and I know a lot about all the different schools of thinking, and I just kind of integrated them into my own. I do my own thing. All of my work right now, I said, is about empowering the transformation of relationships by developing a relationship with yourself. So in that, I call upon systems therapy. I'm really doing, when I work with couples and families, I do a lot of systems therapy and theory and existential, phenomenological. A lot of my work is I focus on being mindful and conscious and aware of what your experience is, because the more conscious and aware of what your experience is, the more you can be an anchor and a center point in your life and come from and live from that place of what your awareness of your experience is. So I use everything I learned goes into whatever I come up. I have a very creative approach. It's very customized to what the client's needs are, and it's very customized.
Okay. Well, changing gears a little bit to talk about the topic, I read the paper you wrote. It was awesome. So I think it would be good to start with like some terminology. So can you define the term stigma and social conditioning and the processes of these?
Yes, I will. And you know what I want to do? I think the best way I could answer that is I want to read from my book that I wrote, because it's right there. I couldn't say it better than I wrote it. Right? So let me read it. I want to read it. It's better.
Do it.
Okay. So what is a stigma? Okay. It's right here in this article that I wrote that you read. A stigma is a visible or known attribute that relegates a person to a substandard or less desirable category of people, a substandard status and category of desirability. So when a person is stigmatized, our perceptions and treatment towards that person are affected. The person gets labeled as defective and subsequently branded as an outcast, an example of what not to be. and that is undesirable. The person's status, how she or they are seen in the eyes of others, and how they will ultimately feel about themselves are all under arbitrary and brutal assault because they're all affected by the stigma. Whether aware or not, the tendency is to react with disdain, avoidance, or indifference. The kind of deep, silent pain that a stigmatized person suffers when one knows that what they are at their core is undesirable, unwanted, unworthy, and not belonging anywhere, breaks a person. It's just that they internalize shame and build up a shame-based identity, which is a deep, ingrained feeling of being defected, undesirable, unworthy, unlovable, just feeling like really, really bad about yourself. Stigma causes shame and alienation to pervade one's sense of self and relationships. On a social conditioning level, stigmatization is a process of societal and familial conditioning. By the time we're adults, the negative reactions and judgments associated to any stigmatized condition are deeply ingrained in our unconscious. Those who carry a stigma know that they will be discredited the moment their stigma becomes known.
So in the context of stigma and social conditioning, how do things like capitalism and other sociopolitical structures impact our socialization and the development of stigma?
In so many ways, on so many levels, and in deep ways, and in so many ways. In terms of capitalism is a system that desirability is based on how good a product is or how good it looks, and the appearance and the effectiveness and the efficiency, or how the performance aspect of what you have and what you are and what you're doing are reinforced, and that's celebrated. That's what's deemed desirable or sellable, or that you can make money on. And if you don't fit those criteria and those conditions, you're going to not make money. You're not going to be wanted. You're not going to be worth anything. So capitalism is a system that fosters appearance outside, how you look and how you perform, and not what's on the inside. So it actually encourages suppression and distortion of what's going on the inside, and with a total emphasis on outside performance and appearance only. So that has, when you're talking about a capitalist system, how, the stigmatization process is deeply ingrained into that system and part of that system, and is inherent in that system. So that is very destructive in terms of celebrating people's expression and being intimate and being vulnerable, being real with what you sell, being open and comfortable enough to say what your real experience is, because there's an atmosphere of unsafety and fear that if you don't fit those criteria, what's deemed desirable, what's wanted, appearance, performance, you're going to pay a steep price. So this system of capitalism is one of reward and punishment. Reward if you're good with the appearances and you're good with the performance, and you can look the way you're supposed to look and what's deemed desirable, you're going to be okay, and you're going to have all the rewards that come with capitalism, whether it's status or money. But if you're not, then you're going to be punished. It's a system of conformity that perpetuates the power and wields stigma as a weapon to maintain conformity and maintain the standards of what's desirable and keep people living, reinforcing people's lives to live up to that, and to suppress and deny and hide and push away what doesn't fit those criteria for desirability.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation. That was a really thorough explanation. And I totally agree with all that. So what sorts of things can one's own personal sense of stigma impact? Like, could you give us an example of maybe a particular stigma one may have that causes them to feel stigmatized, and how that might impact something like, say, relationships, for example?
That's a big question because there's a lot of answers.
Right.
So in terms of relationships, one of the things I teach people in my relationship training when I'm working with relationships, whether it's couples and families, in order to be intimate, in order to connect deeply, there needs to be a safe space for what is coming up. And most of us enter into relationships and develop relationships with people who fit their desire, fit what they're looking for, fit the pictures of what they want. So they see people as what they want to see, or what they like, or what they're drawn to. And they forget that everyone's a mixed bag. So this is where it really comes up, and where stigma shows up in relationships, is that it's really hard to embrace the reality that everyone's a mixed bag, because the things that are not, so mixed bag means you're warts and all. You got warts and you got beautiful skin. So, but you only want to show the beautiful skin. So if you're able to really embrace the everybody is a mixed bag reality and truth, then there would be more safety and comfort in having a safe space for people to be mixed bag, to show their warts, not just their skin. And the intimacy in relationships, the depth of connection and the depth of intimacy is based on the ability for someone to be fully themselves, respond freely and spontaneously without having to worry about whether it's desirable or undesirable or how it's going to land, that they will still be unconditionally accepted. Where it gets in the way in relationships is because people want to be nice, they want to show their good sides, and they get very, very queasy, and it's very dicey and scary to risk showing what might be undesirable. So then when they can no longer hide it and it comes out in a relationship, a lot of times if your relationship is based on your distorted view or your idealized picture of how you want who that person is, or you want that person to be, you're going to get overwhelmed, and probably not, the relationship will not have the foundation to withstand the reality of the mixed bags. It will be disillusioning. It will cause a crash. It will be overwhelming. So this is where it comes in a lot. It's around intimacy and hiding what is stigmatized, hiding what you think. If it's exposed, you'll be rejected, you'll be disrespected. And so there's a lot of that gets in the way of relationships. But there are so many other conditions that therapists deal with where it becomes stigma becomes a very big issue. Now, and I addressed some of these areas in that article that I wrote. Well, let's say for this one, let's talk about the stigma that is attached to these conditions that you will see as a therapist come into your office. When you're talking about things, conditions like epilepsy, bipolar conditions, schizophrenia. This becomes a very big issue in treatment, because when you're treating these people who have these conditions, medication is required with epilepsy, with bipolar, with schizophrenia, all of these conditions, there's really no cure, but the treatment is medication to stabilize the person, to relieve the symptoms or reduce the incidence of the symptoms that could be life-threatening and often are. And because these conditions have a stigma attached to it, the people who you're treating, medication is always an issue. And the way medication is always an issue is that when you're not symptomatic in these conditions, you don't want the medication because you want to be normal. You don't want, if you need the medication, because that means that there's something wrong with you. When you're not taking the medication and you're not symptomatic, you want to be normal and you want to stop taking the medication just because of the stigma. So they go off the medication and then they're at risk of decompensating or having very severe symptoms again. And, I will say also, schizophrenia, I have learned recently, I've known about the stigma that's attached to schizophrenia, but I learned about it recently firsthand because I have a nephew that killed himself only 6 weeks ago, and he was schizophrenic. And he was off his medication at the time that he killed himself. And I know because I was very close to him and I was close with his father, my brother-in-law, that the medication was always an issue. He never wanted to be, it was always a fight. And my brother-in-law and other people couldn't really deal with Ben, who's my nephew, because he had these symptoms. He was schizophrenic. There's this huge stigma that's attached to schizophrenia. And when you're schizophrenic and you're not on medication and you're psychotic and you're delusional and you're having hallucinations, that is very stigmatizing. And for someone who's a loved one and a parent and even a therapist, the effect of the stigma brings up so much shame that it's really hard. My brother-in-law was never really able to understand and be effective in dealing with his son because he couldn't deal with the behavior of the schizophrenic behavior and what goes on in him. It was hard for him to deal with. And also the medication, he couldn't really understand his son's condition and learn how to be more effective when dealing with him because of the stigma, because he could not accept and see his son as schizophrenic. I talk about it with, gays and lesbians, the gay population, what is it? Help me here.
LGBTQIA+.
Thank you. Now, I know the population of people have a huge struggle and pain, lifelong, around dealing with the stigma that's attached to being in one of those conditions. For instance, I know that working with that population, the experience I have some experience. I'm not working that much right now with them, but I've worked a lot in the past. And what I have found is that with these populations, the clinical issues, the work that they have to do in therapy, in addition to everything that they're dealing with in their life and that brings them into therapy, all of these people in this population have to deal with the effects of the stigma. There's 3 primary issues that have to be dealt with with this LGBT population, and that is coming out. Coming out is a deal because you're stepping into the fire of the effects of the stigma. So it's really a difficult situation to navigate because if you don't come out and you're hiding, you're going to be in shame and outside, not living the life you want to live. But then if you do expose it, you're going to be having the consequences of all the effects of the stigma. So coming out, internalized homophobia is something that everyone in that population has to deal with that because the stigma is so strong around that sexual alteration or difference that, and there's so much shame about it that it's become internalized. And so a lot of the work that they have to do is to undo the conditioning and the internalization of shame from the stigma of that condition of being gay or lesbian or whatever they are. And then the third aspect that the third clinical issue that they have to deal with is just living in the world where their sexual orientation and who they are is stigmatized. So they're living in a society where everyone is conditioned in the same way, what's desirable according to being drawn to what's desirable and rejecting what's undesirable. And the internalization that occurs in that, they all have to deal with that and undo that because they hate themselves or feel ashamed at the core of who they are because of the conditioning that was internalized, not because of them. So they have to work on that and become mindful and learn to see how that caused and contributed to how they really feel inside of themselves, about themselves at their core. So when you're working with that population, the effects of stigma are going to be part of the therapy. No matter whether that's a presenting issue or not, that's going to be part of the process of healing and transformation for them and turning their lives around and making them happier, more fulfilled in their lives and relationships. They have to deal with that.
And so what I'm hearing from just kind of condensing a lot of what I've heard from you so far is essentially if we carry a stigma and we're confronted with this, then we have a tendency to more so like, quote, perform our relationships rather than like actually connect, it sounds like. And it sounds like in a individual basis, the barrier to connection when we have a stigma is shame. And that shame is what prevents us from being able to be vulnerable and, wholeheartedly connect with somebody.
Very nice. Exactly. So the way it affects relationships and intimacy is that no one usually feels comfortable enough or to be vulnerable, and no one is going to want to expose in their relationship what they themselves feel is shameful and undesirable and risk that. So you're entering into the relationship based on covering up what you don't want to be seen, and that's going to create a wedge in the relationship and a barrier, and you're living a secret life. You're with someone who you're developing a relationship with and becoming closer and more intimate with, but the whole name of the game for you is to show this part and never, under any circumstances, let the other undesirable shame-based things that you have about yourself be exposed or come out.
What's your approach to like working with stigma and shame with your clients?
Education.
Mm-hmm.
Education is very important. This is what, like, the conversation we're having right now is very similar to the conversation that I would have with clients, that they need to be educated about stigma, what it is, that there's something to be said. Stigma is a force. It's powerful. It's like racism. It's like capitalism. Stigma is a huge monolithic force that affects our culture and how we feel about ourselves and how we relate to each other. It affects everything. Stigma is going to come up for all of us, no matter what, whether we have a condition that carries a stigma, whether it's visible or invisible, or whether it's neither. It's still, the stigma comes down to what is undesirable, what is desirable. So it's a very, very big area, and it can be very general and globalized and to all relationships and all people all the time, but it also can be broken down to more specific situations and conditions that have a stigma attached to them, and some will have a greater stigma and some have less of a stigma, and some are more visible and some are less visible, and how they hide it. So most of the people that I work with, not only is the generalized, globalized effects of stigma relevant in a conversation, but if they have any of the conditions, and many do, like if you're gay or if you have a seizure disorder or schizo, those people need to be taught. We need to talk about that. So if I'm working with a gay client, I'm going to be talking about like the areas that I'm talking about, the way stigma has affected them. I'd be talking about the internalized homophobia. I'd be talking about the way stigma impairs or impedes the coming out process, and also talking about what they have to live in the world. I mean, I think that the education that I do with clients around stigma reinforces the reality that something like stigma exists, and it's okay to bring it out, put it on the table, talk about it, expose it, see it for what it is, and then work with it in a way to mitigate the shame internalization process that occurs, and to kind of separate yourself from it and be able to see that that was internalized, not who you are, and be able to begin embracing the other aspects of yourself that were left in the dark and never realized because you felt all your energy was expended keeping up the appearances and not letting that out.
Gotcha. Okay. So everybody is socially conditioned in varying ways to varying degrees, whether we like it or not, even therapists. In what ways have you fought back against your own social conditioning? And what advice do you have for others who wish to seek out how stigma has impacted their perceptions of others and themselves and wish to change that?
Yeah, and I wrote in this article that I learned about my homophobia, for instance, when I was working with gay clients. And it was unconscious. I wasn't aware of it at the time. And my clients, the clients I was working with actually pointed it out to me. And it was coming out in a way that I never really found out as I should have. And I was responsible to find out more about the specifics of AIDS and HIV. And because I never let myself reckon with the reality of AIDS, because I had difficulties with homophobia, and it just made me uncomfortable. But I became conscious of it in this process, and I had the humility to appreciate my clients who were pointing it out rather than, lambasting me and pointing out my ignorance. They were very compassionate and supportive and allowed a safe space for me to recognize how that stigma was affecting me and how I was internalizing it. And I came to, and it came out, so it came into light. And I appreciated that. So, what I really recommend for therapists to do to get more of a handle on stigma and how they're affected by it. There's this great book that just came out, and it's not about stigma. It's about racism. It's called White Fragility. You probably heard of it. You know of it, by Robin DiAngelo. Anyway, she makes this great point about why it's so difficult for white people in particular to talk openly and honestly about racism, is because there's a binary. There's a binary that racism is bad. If you're racist and you don't want to be racist. So because we don't want to be racist, we can't own up or look at with any objectivity at all, how we can be racist without intending it, without being bad about it, just because of the influence, like of stigma. Racism is a factor like stigma, the way it influences all white people in particular. So the binary aspect of it is like learning to look at your own homophobia or whether it's racism, whether it's homophobia or whatever it is, as a phenomena that affects your behavior, that doesn't make you good or bad. Like if you're homophobic, you're not a bad person. You're just like everybody else who's been in this society brought up under these conditions that have internalized the system of desire, reward, and punishment, and what's desirable and what's not desirable. So it's really encouraging people to bring it up and look at themselves in a non-judgmental way, but to look at how their beliefs and their behaviors are preferential or have beliefs and negative associations about certain conditions. So yeah, I don't know if I answered you. You were talking about being tongue twisted earlier. I don't feel like I'm smooth here and I'm answering these questions as well as they are in my head. So
no, you're doing a great job. So the other thing I want to point out, I think is if we have an awareness of our own stigmas, we have a responsibility to do what we need to do to resolve them, especially as therapists. And especially as people in humanity, just even regarding racism. If we are able to recognize it, we have a responsibility to do something about it, is how I feel.
Right, but you have to recognize it. So it's really about recognizing it and not making yourself wrong or having any negative or positive, moralistic or preferential interpretation of it. It just is a phenomena that we all are affected by. It's social conditioning. It's cultural. So all white people, by virtue of their whiteness, have behaved and have beliefs that are racist, which doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them regular, normal white people who've been internalized and inculcated all of generations, hundreds of years of indoctrination and internalization of these beliefs about them, whether it's black or white, whether it's gay or straight, whatever it is. I know that for myself. I've had many conversations in the past with different people when they started talking about privilege, white privilege, and how I couldn't have it because I didn't want to be, I don't treat other people that way, like I'm privileged, like I'm better than them, or I'm superior, or they're inferior. And I couldn't get it. Like how I'm not racist, I'm not that way. I'm not racist. But then over time, and especially after reading this book, I was able to see, by virtue of my whiteness, that I do have beliefs that are almost unconscious, maybe subconscious, and I do have behaviors that are preferential, that are based on my privilege and my superiority and their inferiority. And I could see that now, and I understand it, and I have compassion for myself and more understanding and compassion for those people who are at the effect of it. So it's only been good for me. Yeah, now I see, just by being white, by being in that preferential, I'm in a desirable race and color of skin, and I have to live with that awareness. And I'm almost racist by default, and we're all homophobic almost by default, because that's how we've all been conditioned. So we have to shed light on, and it all goes into our unconscious. So the more light that's shed on it, the more we're able to bring it out on the table and talk about it and see it and explore it and share other people's experiences, the more we can come to terms with the full magnitude and the reality of that.
Got it. Well, thank you, Daniel, for explaining that. And, you're quite vulnerable there as well, and I appreciate that. So let's switch gears again back to you as a therapist. What kinds of experience do you have working with particularly vulnerable clients, such as those who are transgender, undocumented, or BIPOC, to name a few examples?
I am very, very aware now, when I am with any people in those categories, that they are stigmatized people. They are the less desirable people. They have to live with the effects of stigma and this internalization of shame. And so I would try to lead the conversations and have conversations with them about their experience of that, what the experiences that they've had that were abusive and life-threatening and harmful because of their inherent stigmatized condition. So all people of color, everyone who's non-white right now, I I am super sensitive and aware right there immediately that any person of color, any person that has any stigmatized condition, whether it's visible or invisible, have been hurt and have been hurt by this social conditioning, have internalized shame about it, have distorted perceptions about people and the world about it. It gets in the way of their relationships. It gets in the way of how they live and how they relate. And so it's a theme. I work with it as a theme. It's very it's very in my face right now. It's very at the surface, this business about stigma and the effects of it and how it affects the quality of our lives and relationships. So there's a lot of process of education that we explore, and then it becomes very personalized around what their specific personal experiences have been and what they've been through and how they deal with it and how they want to deal with it and what they could do to deal with it better, to take better care of themselves, to be more fulfilled, just to feel more fulfilled in their lives. So it's
yeah.
This is often, I don't think that you can go to have therapy with me for any period of time without this coming up, these conversations that we're having right now. Because when you talk about your own identity and how you feel, self-feelings and identity and how you relate and intimacy and mixed bags, everyone's a mixed bag. It's a basic principle that most people may say, oh yeah, of course, we're all mixed bag, but that's not how we live. That's not how we behave. That's not how we relate. We're still robots and dictated by what's been internalized according to those standards of what's desirable and what's undesirable. Everything, it's like dominoes. Everything follows from that. So you have to go back to where the first domino, where that was, and see if we can keep that by going back to it and starting from where the first one, maybe we can keep it from falling and knocking down all the other ones.
Okay. What could a new client expect from an initial session with you? And what about on an ongoing basis?
I have a couple of clients recently, new clients recently, that when I asked them, how they heard about me or, how they got to me, the last two clients I asked about this, they said they went to my website and they saw what I wrote and they saw videos of me introducing myself and my work, and they liked my direct style, my New York, down home style right here, being direct, right in your face, the way I am. So it's great when the people go to my website and they get a taste or a sample of me. And if they could see my style, that I'm kind of direct and out there and maybe confrontative or just say what I have to say, that could engender fear and they don't want to work with me because it would get them too uncomfortable dealing with someone that's so out there like I am. Or it may be something that it builds trust and credibility that they want that. And so they're coming to me wanting that and expecting to get it. And then it's good, then I can deliver it because it's so natural. I'm not trying to be the way I am. It just is the way I am. So there is a lot of Daniel that comes with the territory. And it doesn't fit every person. Some people don't want to work with me. A lot of people don't. And you know what? I'm glad if they don't want to work with me. I don't want to work. It's not going to be a good fit. So, so you could expect me to be asking you directly all the time, what's going on with you? What are you feeling? Demanding, looking for you to go deeper into yourself, into the more vulnerable, delicate, sensitive, tender areas, and to create a safe space to come out. It's all about creating a safe space. And the other thing that is a theme in my work with every client, no matter it's couples, family, or whatever, this thing about the relationship with yourself. So when you're coming into work with me, you can count on that what we're going to be doing is working on your relationship with yourself, whatever that means, is part of the therapy process, but that is going to be the goal. So you know what I say? One of the things that I'm famous for and that I write, that I write a lot and I say a lot about is the quality of your relationships, is the quality of your life, and the quality of your relationships is the quality of your relationship with yourself.
Okay. You used a few words a couple minutes ago when you started talking that may apply to this, but how would you say your clients would describe you or experience you?
My New York style, say what I have to say, my directness, my ability to connect and go down deep and hit the spots that need to come out, that need to be addressed. And, they can count on me for that. And they rely on that, from getting that from me. And I'm developing a relationship with them in the process that the whole thing about relationship with yourself, we do that work in the context of our therapeutic alliance, our relationship. So it's in their developing relationship with me that they go deeper into themselves and learn how to take better care of themselves with their symptoms, with their struggles, and in their relationships. And they appreciate that. And it's new. I don't know. I don't know if this sounds, typical for you, this is what therapists do, but I think that this is a very unique, it's unique to me and my style and my orientation. And I always say also, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships, what happens in your therapy to me is not because of me being a great therapist or you hearing something I say and liking it, but it's more grows out of what we're able to create together. We're creating it. So you're part of our relationship and working together is that you are gaining and developing a relationship with yourself. And that is new. Most of the overwhelming majority of the people that I work with may know this, may have heard this, but don't bring it into their lives and practice it, and it's not real. They may say that they know about how important having a relationship is with yourself, and it's always the relationship with yourself, but they don't really have one and they don't really live it. And there's a big difference between that. So a lot of the therapy is making this real. What does this really feel like to have a relationship with yourself? How does it empower you? How does it heal you? What does it do for you in terms of the direction you want to go in your life, who you want to be, and how you want your relationships to be? So it's very unique, and I'm unique in this orientation and these perspectives, and that uniqueness and that creativity is much appreciated and is what people
get feedback about. Yeah,
they're getting the most and they appreciate the most about the process and working with me.
Got it. Are you a therapist who will laugh or cry with your clients?
The answer is yes, easily. And it's not like I cry with my clients. It's not like I cry with my clients, but I am open enough and present enough in the moment, like when I'm talking to you right now, and you say something, you share something to me, or you say something that affects me emotionally, that moves me, that touches me, that can bring tears to my eyes, or I'm out there. I'm sharing that moment with them, and I'm totally comfortable with that. And it deepens our connection. And there's nothing, I'm not like dumping my stuff on them or it's making it about me. It's just deepens being able to be emotionally present and vulnerable, potentiates and encourages my client to be more comfortable with their emotions and their feelings and be with them and express them with another person.
Makes sense to me. How do you define?
So it's like I'm practicing what I preach. That's emotional access, being in touch with your emotions, expressing your emotions is a key part of your well-being, your health and well-being. And so I do that. I say that, but I'm actually very strong in that area because I have
You're modeling it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. How do you define holding space for someone?
I'm holding space right now. I'm taking a breath and I listen. And I know this is what listening is. Listening is creating, it's not just this, but it's this and more, but it is always creating a safe space of openness and receptivity for the person who is across from me, who I am with, whether it's personal or professional, to be who they are, to let what their true experience is in that moment, at any given moment, to be fully out there. And I will meet them there. I will do the same with them. And that's really how to be, to have emotion, to have access to your feelings, to express them, and to be able to build relationships in which you feel safe enough, both of you feel safe enough with each other to be fully yourselves at any given moment about whatever's going on, to be able to come out and have a safe space. So listening, I always also say that listening is very active engagement. People think, oh, listening, people kind of fade out or are not as engaged when they're not talking, or they feel more engaged when they're talking. For me, I'm more engaged when I'm listening. Listening is powerful engagement, creating a safe space and being receptive and being conscious and sharing an experience with someone in the moment only makes them more safe and comfortable to do the same. So all that listening it's an art. It's an art of listening. And I feel very, very powerful when I'm listening, just to be able to be with whatever the person, look at them and be with them and share them. Listening has a very powerful effect. It's very underestimated and it's very subtle. But when you're listening attentively and you're present emotionally and feeling what the other person is expressing, that is enlivening and validating and intimate and connecting with the other person. And it's nourishing. It's inherently nourishing, listening. And it's just, again, it's more active engagement than actually talking. So nothing to be underestimated and to always be appreciated as an art that you could always get better at. And the better you are at it, the more intimacy you're going to have and the deeper connections you're going to have. It's all about how well you're able to listen, how much space you have the other person to be. Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received from a supervisor?
Oh, the best advice that I've seen from a supervisor is to trust myself, to go with go with what's going on with me in the moment, rather than to bring what I learned from textbooks be on road from textbooks. But the greatest thing I learned from supervisors in my career was that therapy is an art form. And it's a creative process. And it requires you to be present in the moment with your client and not trying to be busy saying the right thing or doing a certain technique or following some kind of agenda or protocol or structure or technique. It's about being present in the moment and responding to what's going on in the moment and taking that to a direction that you feel you want to go in the name of greater wholeness, health, fulfillment, intimacy, or whatever.
Okay. What would you say you've personally learned about yourself and or the world through your practice?
I am blessed, and I want to acknowledge myself for choosing this work that I'm so passionate about, but it is so fulfilling. It's so creative for me. The magical moments of connection, insight, transformation are the highlights of my day. It's what I live for. It's where I can make a difference. Those are the most powerful moments for me. And I've had many. I don't know what's going on with me, but in the last couple of months, I feel like I've been in a zone and I've been really on, and I've had a lot of like blockbuster, one in a million moments, like magical, powerful, transformative moments that was so great that it really can make a difference in terms of how people feel about themselves and how they live their lives and the quality of their relationships. That's my purpose in life. That's what I want to do. That's my calling. That's what I want. That's the difference I want to make. That's the contribution I want to make. And it happens. It's real. And it happens in small moments in my office. Whatever happens at that particular moment is what inspires me and makes me feel good. Those are highlights. Those become the highlights. Those moments, those things become, that's why I'm doing this work.
Yeah. What do you do to take care of yourself?
I've been practicing mindfulness. I think that the year 2020 and 2021, the last 2 or 3 years have been most memorable to me because I feel that I've been most mindful. I've been more mindful. I'm not meditating more, but I have a more mindful approach and awareness in everything I do and whatever it is I do. So this being mindful is a way of taking care of myself and keeping my level of reactivity and emotional intensity closer to neutral, staying more balanced, and listening more, being more observant as opposed to having to respond. The way I take care of myself right now, what is when I'm being mindful and I'm aware of engaging like I am with you, and you're talking or there's something I want to say and I want to kind of blurt it into the conversation because it's so important and I want to say it. But you know what I found out about taking care of myself is that, you know what? I don't have to say it. How I take care of myself is these days, oftentimes realizing that not everything that I want to say has to be said. Not everything that I have to say and that I do say is better because I said it. And it could be better for me to actually not say it. So I'm playing around with that. I'm more receptive and less invested in having to say something or control something or influence something, or I'm much more comfortable going with the process right now. That's how I take care of myself. Let the process be, not get bogged down or locked into any one thought or any one situation. It's okay. It's okay. I'm much lighter now.
How would you define happiness?
One of the things I say about myself is that I'm not a joyful person. Joy is not an easy emotion for me. I rarely have joy. I don't relate to joy. I don't care about happiness. I'm not happy. I don't need to be happy. I don't care about happiness. But the truth is, I'm happiest when I'm creative, when I'm creatively engaged, when I'm I'm having a conversation with you, a really great conversation, or I'm writing, or I'm working with a client or doing therapy. It's a creative outlet. Or when I'm watching a great movie, or there's really great entertainment, whether it's sports. You asked me what I'm into before. I'm into sports, movies, and theater. So I couldn't be happier than I am seeing a great movie, great concert, great sports event, a great play. That's when I'm happy, is when I'm engaged in something.
So you would describe then happiness perhaps as fleeting.
Yeah. It's I think I was happy. I felt happy. I wouldn't say, I don't know if happiness is the right word, but I felt a deep sense of joy. Because 2 days ago, right now I'm in Denver visiting with my family. So my wife, my 2 kids and their spouses. And we celebrated my birthday on Tuesday night.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. And I did feel joy. I did feel a deep sense of joy and happiness and love. Love is happiness. When I'm able to feel my feelings of my love for someone and my closeness and that warmth, I'm always happy. That always makes me happy. But it's fleeting, like you said. I don't feel that all the time. But when on Tuesday night, they went around. Well, my son took me out to a great restaurant, and part of the dinner, during the dinner, everyone there, 5 people, were sharing with me what it meant to them that I was their father, and their spouses, that their father-in-law and my wife was acknowledging me, and it just, the love and closeness is what makes me happy. So whenever I am engaged in, whether I'm creatively engaged I'm engaged in a creative process, or I feel very connected, I'm very happy. Feel a lot of joy and gratitude. It's where I want to be. But those moments, like you said, moments are few and far between. These aren't lasting states or conditions. They are situational and temporary. They're momentary. So what I want to do in life is to build up as many of these moments as I can, because these are the moments that become memorable. I don't remember anything else really. So it's nothing else is really that meaningful other than when I can actually experience the love and closeness that are in my relationships, or when I'm engaged in a creative process with someone.
Got it. Okay. So we have a few questions left. The next couple are a little vulnerable. The first one is, what is the most embarrassing moment you have had as a clinician?
Oh, there's several. There are several. Well, one was what I was talking about around stigma, when 30 years ago, when I was doing these groups with the gay and lesbian population, and seeing how my homophobia was playing out, coming out despite of, me, I'm not homophobic, I'm good with everyone. So I felt like I had egg on my face, and embarrassed, because I had to swallow the bitter pill and say, oh yeah, I guess I am. I'm pretty homophobic, I guess, despite my own ways I want to see myself. So that was embarrassing, but it was a good embarrassment, and it was appreciated and celebrated and embraced by the client that I felt embarrassed with. I may say things that I regret, or things that didn't land, or things that were misunderstood and caused the session or the conversation to go into a different direction, or where I had to be defensive, or I had to be responsible and own something that I said or did. I'm having difficulty coming up with the specific examples, but what I strive to be in my mindfulness is okay to make mistakes and to be embarrassed and to have egg on my face. Yes, I've done that. I will continue to make those mistakes. I will have egg on my face at times, and I'll be okay. And I'll turn all of those into learning experiences. So the embarrassment, the embarrassment's not going to last or become internalized, or I'm not going to go too far with it. I'm just going to, if I get constructive feedback and learn something about myself, I feel nothing but appreciation. If it doesn't fit and I feel it's critical or judgmental or destructive and not really supportive to me, I don't take it on. I'm able to screen it out and use what works and leave the rest, and not get into a whole hurt or defeated or defensive reaction to it.
Yeah. Okay. Next vulnerable question is, are you in therapy, or have you ever been in therapy?
I have been in lots of therapy through, I guess the first 10 years of my career. There was intensive therapy that I did, individual therapy with 3 different therapists, maybe from anywhere from a year to 3 years or 4 years with each one of those over a period of 10 years. And most recently, 3 years ago, we had a big upset in my family. My wife and my 2 kids. We had a very, very big upset, and we went into family therapy. The 4 of us went into family therapy, and we had 3 sessions of family therapy together. And they were not productive. And I had a reservation from the beginning about it, because I'm a therapist right now that at this point in my career, I can't handle being in therapy right now, because I naturally, instead of being a client and seeking therapy from the therapist, I could start with the problem that I'm having, something I want to do therapy on. And then all of a sudden the therapist is responding, and I'm like looking at them doing therapy on me, and I'm in therapist mode. I'm in a therapist mode, and I'm not in a client mode. I am not anymore at this stage of my life. I have to be honest and tell you that I'm not comfortable right now in therapy. But I've been in a lot of therapy, even family therapy, and the therapy that I did have, early in my career, was great. It was very deep. It was great therapy, and great relationships with all 3 therapists. So I'm into therapy, my own therapy. But at this point right now, I'm too much of a therapist right now, in a therapist mindset, and too little in a client mindset. I just can't. I'm not comfortable with that. It's not going to work for me.
It's kind of like how doctors are the worst patients, you know?
Yeah, that's true for me. Yeah, I can't do it.
Well, Daniel, is there anything else you think would be good for a potential client or other therapist to know about you and or stigma and social conditioning?
No, I think I touched upon, you asked me questions, and I was able to touch upon a lot of the important, most salient points or features of this talk about stigma. I think we did cover a lot of ground. I don't think I was as clear and as concise and to the point as I would have liked to have felt, but
I think you gave a lot of great information.
Thank you. Okay, good.
And thanks so much for being on the show.
Okay, is there anything else you want to ask me, or that you haven't asked me, or anything else you want to?
No, I mean, I think you gave us a really good rundown of stigma and social conditioning and your own experiences, and I think it was fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Noah.
The next question. The next question. The next question. The next question.
Thank you for listening to NextQuest podcast. I learned something new today, and I hope you did too. Stay tuned for next week's episode featuring Michael Romero, licensed clinical social worker supervisor, who will be discussing his practice in an area of specialty, creative therapeutic interventions, and working with children, teens, and families. NextQuest podcast is sponsored by Jan Dimmitt Resources. Save yourself the time and stress of credentialing and let the experts at Jan Dimmitt Resources do what they do best. For over 20 years, Jan Dimmitt Resources has provided administrative support and credentialing services to mental health professionals in Texas and beyond. Visit their website at jandimmitt.com. That is JANDIMMITT.com, or call 512-731-5725 for more information on all the ways they can make running your practice easier for you. NextQuest podcasts rely solely on donations to keep this project going. Please consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page at www.patreon, that's patreon.com/NextQuestPodcast, or you can make a one-time donation on my website at www.nextquestcounseling.com/aboutnextquestpodcast. You can also support the podcast by liking our Facebook page. Until next question, this is Noah Garcia signing off.